Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Pits Motor Chaos. This is Joe Dave. I got a line special guest, Bone Alcohol Dragster driver, Rich Bailey. How's it going, Rich?
I'm doing good, Dave, and yourself.
Nah, not too bad. The weather's kind of cool, but it's I'll take it. It's a little bit rainy though.
Where are you calling me from?
Illinois, by the close to Wisconsin border.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's kind of a national show then.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So how's Dragster been running for you this year?
Well, this year it was kind of a good bad season for us. I hate to say it, but it seems like that's kind of a pattern. We always seem to have a lot of issues, and I don't know why that is. It just seems like it takes us a while to get things sorted out every year, and then we get to Spokane, and we actually won the B final and ran 6-second runs every time we made a pass, and very impressive. And then we ran another race and did real well there in Yakima, and then the next race we mechanically started having problems again. So part of it is blown alcohol. It's pretty brutal to say the least, and unfortunately we have our issues. We don't have a lot of money, and one of the things is, I always jokingly say, if you think you have a bad, just talk to your neighbor. Well, a lot of times your neighbor in the pits are going to have a couple of extra motors or extra transmission, so if something goes wrong, and then they're back at it before you know it. Where it was me, if I heard something, it might take me 2 or 3 races to recover.
So maybe you got some gremlins in the car.
Yeah, we finished 7th out of 23 cars, so that's pretty good. But we were really actually hoping to finish in the top 5 this year, and I felt like it was doable. We did invest a lot of money the year before in a different motor, and so we were hoping that everything was going to be rock solid. But there was other things that would hit us. Like we actually had a bracket for a brake caliber that broke on us. The first the left did, and then 2 or 3 races down the road the right one did. So things happen, and you don't. And it's just, if you have a crystal ball, you're going to do well every time. But a crystal ball I don't have, and so I just have to kind of roll with the punches.
So your race schedule's done for the year?
Well, here's what we do. What I did was I decided I'd go ahead and make lemonade out of lemons. And our last race was just a couple weeks ago in Medford, and we really had the door open for us to do really well at that race. And I felt we were going to do well, and the crew felt we were going to do well. And we go out there and make a test run, which is optional, and I wish that we would have done that. And all of a sudden, we lost power at the top end, and it turned out, after taking it back to the pits, that some bolts had sheared off between the pulley and the crank. And so that's something that it's not catastrophic, but it's enough work that, we had one race left in Woodburn, and we decided that rather than try to get everything ready for the last race in Woodburn for the year, we would just take the car to the air show instead, which was massive as far as the amount of spectators that were there. And so I really don't regret my decision at all, because, that's really what the sponsors want. They want the car to be out, seen by a lot of people. But having said that, had we not had the problem we had in Medford, then we certainly would have gone to the race over there at the Fall Classic in Woodburn. But it did rain out, so it proved to be a good decision on my part.
So what's the plan now, to take the Dragster apart and get ready for next season?
Well, what we're going to do, Dave, is I don't know how much you know about my team, but my program's a lot different than everybody else's. We do a lot of car displays, and and we have quite a diversity. We do the Oregon State Fair. We do the Marion County Fair. We do a big fireworks show. This weekend, the car's going to be at this pumpkin patch, and I remember I went to that pumpkin patch when my daughters were young, and I saw the young families there that buy minivans and that kind of stuff. And our main sponsor is Capilata Group, which is a car dealer. And so anyway, so what I did was I found the farmer and I said, hey, we'd love to display the car out here. And he thought it was a great idea, and we've been doing it ever since. So this weekend we'll be displaying the car at this Bauman Farms Pumpkin Patch, which is kind of the Disneyland of agricultural events. I mean, they get thousands of people too. So with our program, it's I can't protect what happens with the race car. That's out of my hands. What happens, happens. But I can make sure that the car gets as much exposure as possible. And so we just do a lot of car displays, and we'll probably have this car's probably been seen this year by probably 200,000 people close up. We let the kids sit in the car. We sign pictures. We do a lot of stuff the other race teams don't do, and it seems to work for us because I've had Capilata Group as my main sponsor for 19 years. So next year it'll be 20 years with Capital. We have the longest running sponsorship in the history of Royal Purple Motor Oil. We've had NGK spark plugs for a long time. So you can see where that's going. It's all about getting the people close up to that race car, and then hopefully they'll take a picture of it with their kid in the car, and then they walk away with a great feeling about our sponsors. That's really what it's all about. Hands-on marketing.
Besides those three sponsors, do you have any other sponsors?
Yeah, we have a lot of sponsors. We've got probably, 15, 20 different companies that help us. We have several money sponsors, Capilata Group, Burgerville, and then we have a lot of product sponsors. And so, of course, the product sponsors don't get as much real estate on the car as say Capilata Group, but they'll get their share. We have one real unique sponsor, which is an organization called Drums and Disabilities, and the founder of that company or organization rather, he was dyslexic as a child, and he became a rock and roll drummer and started drumming for different heavy metal bands. I know you'd appreciate that. And anyway, when he started drumming, his dyslexia went away, and so he was able to get rid of his braces and whatnot that he had on his legs. So he started this organization, and he actually came on board and with his own money spent some money on our building a body for the race car, and then we were able to put a new paint scheme on it. So that was cool.
Yeah, it is. That's pretty neat, man.
Yeah, it is. And the nice thing is when we do a lot of these displays, we'll have people that come up and they'll see that logo on the car, and they'll have a son or daughter that's challenged, and they'll ask about it, and then I refer to the website, and then I'm hoping that they'll contact Pat and get some help from him.
All right, so now, Rich, who are the crew members that keep this dragster going?
Pardon me?
I said, who are the crew members that keep this dragster going?
Oh, we got great crew guys. I've had a lot of people come and go over the years, and I really appreciate all of them, because without them I can't race. So they're just as important in the grand scheme of things as I am. We've got a great crew chief, Brent Sanford. He's been with me for years, and he took a break for a while, and he's a rock musician himself. And anyway, he came back on the team, and so we've been running pretty well with Brent, and we also have quite a few other guys that help us out as well. So it's a great program.
All right, now let's turn back the clock, Rich, and I want to ask you how did you get into drag racing and when?
Okay, that was that's a story in itself, and I don't mean to date myself, but when I was about I was like 12 years old, and and I was building Revell models and going to the store when my mom would go shopping. I'd be going to the magazine stand and looking at Hot Rod and Carcraft magazine, and so that's how I got interested in drag racing. And then we have two great racetracks in this area. One's Woodburn Drag Strip, and one used to be Portland International Raceway. And the same guy that promoted Orange County, Bill Donor, promoted Portland. So he was able to get all the big time cars to come through when they're on their way to Seattle. They would stop at Portland for a race. And so anyway, Don the Snake Prudhomme came through town, and I went to that. And I asked my dad. I said, I was building, Army Monza funny car model, and I said, hey, could you take me to Portland to see Don Prudhomme? And he says, yeah, sure. And so I went to that race, and I remember it was really hot that day, and we got pit passes and walked down there, and here I am really close to the snake, and I started I brought a camera and took a bunch of pictures, and then next thing I know, there's 32 funny cars a few months later, and I went to that and took a bunch more pictures, and then went to another race and took a bunch more pictures, and I became a pit rat, and I take all these photos, which I've coincidentally have now just started scanning and releasing on Facebook, and the response has been off the hook. All these people seeing all these pictures from funny cars from back in the 70s and top fuel dragsters and whatnot. And so anyway, so when I got out of college, sadly my dad passed away, and I took the money that I inherited and bought my first dragster, which was a front engine car, and I ran that for quite a while, about 2 years, and I outgrew it, and then I moved to Super Comp, and I did that for a couple of years, and the problem with that was it was like racing with a governor on your car, and then so we moved into Top Comp, and with that program we went with a better motor and went a lot faster. And this gentleman by the name of Art Mendoza came along and said, hey, let's put a blown alcohol motor in your car. And he said that in the middle of the summer, and then that wasn't the time to switch. And so at the end of the year, he came back by again and offered it again, and I said, yeah, let's do it. And so that's how I got into blown alcohol dragster racing. And the problem that we face here is that there's really not a class for our car, because it's not really a top alcohol dragster. It's more of just a blown alcohol dragster. So the best it's run is 676 at 206 miles an hour. So we're not fast enough to compete in top alcohol. Having said that, though, we started our own racing circuit called Blown Alcohol Thunder with Ben Jones out of Montana, who runs a funny car, and then also Derek Snelson, the promoter out at Renegade Raceway. And so we started that, and we just finished our 5th year with the Blown Alcohol Thunder circuit, and it's been very successful. Like I said earlier, we had 23 cars run with us this year, and we have great races in Oregon, Idaho, Washington, Montana.
Nice. So now, what was your experience like for the first time ever going down a drag strip?
first started, the first car I ever raced actually was a street car, so that wasn't, I don't count that. But the first time with the front engine dragster was pretty cool, you know. But the problem there, I mean, it's not a problem, but the thing with that first run is it only lets you run a half track. So on that half track pass, you know, you don't experience as much. But I will tell you this: what was really a thrill and a scare at the same time was the first time I went down the track in a blown alcohol dragster. I remember the guys had me all set to go, and I got up there, and this was the first full run, and it was kind of a cold day, and I let go of the button, and the car's going down the track, and it nearly hit the wall, and I got out at the end of the track, and I'm thinking, man, I don't know if I want to do this. And the guys came up and said, man, you did so well. That was such a great run. And so I kind of eliminated those fears right then and there, and went on to do this for years and years to come. So it was it was pretty scary though, that first time going down the track in the blown alcohol dragster. One thing that did happen to me is I have had a couple of crashes. One of the crashes happened at Woodburn, and that was when we had the injected alcohol motor. And sadly, what happened in that situation was a crew member, somebody that hasn't been with us for years, he had really long legs, and he got in the car, and when he got out, he didn't push the steering wheel in far enough, and I'm going down the track, and all of a sudden the steering wheel came in my hands, and the car veered towards the wall, and then I would have been okay, but at the end of the track there was a big gap there for the ambulance to go through, and so I went right into another wall straight on, and I remember just that moment before hitting the wall that it was going to be curtains, and but the car luckily bounced off it and went across the track, and then it finally stopped. But I had a really bad crash a few years later in Seattle, where I hit the wall at 140 miles an hour. And that was an extremely scary situation. I had just got my license with the blown alcohol car, and then on our first big outing, we went out and ran in the sixes. So there was going to be a big race at Woodburn or at Seattle the next weekend. So the forecast looked pretty good. It was in the spring, so we decided we'd go ahead and do it, and got everything all ready to go. And then the forecast flipped, but since we were committed, we decided to go ahead and do it anyway. We go up there, and it's raining, and finally it dried off, and the track was really cold, and so anyway, we were racing in this top comp class, though, but with the blown car, and I got up there and let go of the button. I launched the car, and I'm going down the track, and then all of a sudden, the car went in the other lane, and I think it's driver error, to be honest with you, and I just tried to get back in my own lane, and when I did that, I lost control of it, and it hit the wall point blank at 140 miles an hour, and we know that because of the timing on the track. But here's the thing. I just bought a Hans device, and it was only the second time I'd worn it. And at that time, they were not required by NHRA. And normally, anything that's not required, I don't buy, just because of the expense that I'm already spent on everything else. And so anyway, when I hit that wall, the car ricocheted, spun around, and then I slid through the top end of the track upside down, and it all happened in 10 seconds, faster than a few of the cars that were running there. So, that I remember my crew chief at the time thought that I had died. And anyway, he got down there, and I was in the ambulance, but I wasn't hurt, and so I refused to go to the hospital and didn't, and I just had a sore tailbone for a month. And around that time, there was a car called the Rocketeer, and I'd seen it in magazines. It was really a bitchin' looking dragster. And so anyway, I needed to find a new car for our program, and I knew that our car was a total loss. And so anyway, somebody told me that a guy in Coos Bay, which is fairly close to us, had a blown alcohol dragster for sale, and I called the guy, and he said, well, he says, it's a movie-themed car. And I said, really? I said, what movie? He says, well, it's the movie The Rocketeer. And I said, oh, you've got the Rocketeer car? And he says, yeah. And so anyway, I went down and looked at it, and it was just as beautiful as I remembered it. And so we went ahead and bought the car, and we've been running that car ever since.
Wow. So at least you were able to walk away from that accident.
I was very lucky. We'll never know, but I'll tell you that had I not been wearing that Hans device, and I gotta really credit Burke over at Drag Racing Online for this, because I'm an avid reader of that website, and he was telling guys, come on guys, you guys got to go out there and buy these Hans devices, because Eric Medlin had just recently passed away driving the John Force Castle car at Gainesville, and I think that's what convinced me to do it. And so I went ahead and bought that Hans device, and as I mentioned, it was the second time I had worn it. And it's very possible that we wouldn't be talking tonight, because either I'd be in a wheelchair right now or maybe even worse.
Well, knock on wood, you won't have no more accidents, Rich.
Well, I hope it never happens again, I'll tell you that.
Yep. So now, what's been the fastest ET you've had with this dragster?
The fastest we've ever run is 6.76 seconds at 206. And it's kind of funny because we do a lot of car displays, like I mentioned, and we talk to a lot of people. We talk to thousands of people every year. Some will come up and they'll be blown away by that ET, and yet others go, oh, that's it? Because they see the cars on TV, and they see 4-second, 300-mile-an-hour runs, and they see our car, which kind of looks like a top fuel car, and or a top alcohol car, and so they expect the same. But I just jokingly tell them, I say, we just go as fast as our wallet will allow, right?
Now, where do you get all your fire safety equipment from?
Pardon me, I didn't hear that.
Where do you get all your fire safety equipment from?
Oh, okay. It's kind of been, I just buy it when I need it. I don't have a particular supplier. We bought in DJ before, Simpson. I have a lot of Simpson stuff. I have an Impact fire suit. It's all good stuff. We bought stuff from Security Safety out in Seattle. And we don't ever try to cheat on safety. Safety is number one, obviously. But I pretty much buy stuff when I need it, and sometimes it doesn't all match as far as coming from the same manufacturer.
All right, now going back to when you were young, watching drag racing, growing up, did you have any heroes?
Go ahead. I didn't catch that. I got to tell the people that's listening right now, I'm doing this interview in my Camaro, and so I have to turn on the motor once in a while, so the radio doesn't turn off. So that's what happened. So what was your question again?
I said, going back to when you were growing up as a youngster watching drag racing, did you have any heroes growing up?
Did I have any heroes?
Yeah,
absolutely. All of them were my heroes. I mean, I'd go to the races, and if there was a car that was there that I knew about that was from back east or something, I'd just be blown away that it was there. I would say, though, I have a couple of real big heroes. One, of course, is Don the Snake Prudhomme. I would say he's my number one hero. I was at, if you watch the movie Snake and Mongoose and saw the kids playing with their Hot Wheel cars, that was me basically. And I always built his model cars. And I have a story about the Snake. I Before computers, I actually did hand lettering. I got into hand lettering, and one time I met Don Perdome at a car show in Portland, and I told him that I did hand lettering. He said, "Oh, really?" And he says, "You have anything to show me?" And I said, "Yeah." And I took him down and showed him a couple cars that were in the show that I had lettered. And he goes, "Oh, that's cool." And so he says, "You can do a car like mine?" I go, "Yeah." And so anyway, he needed performance corner lettered on the quarter panels of his car. So I was going to Oregon State at the time, and I ran home and I told my dad. I says I got a lettering job tomorrow. He said, "Well, who's you doing?" I said, "If you guys got a funny name, Prude Home." And he goes, "You're doing Don Perdome?" And I go, "Yeah." And anyway, he was really excited about it, and so I went down to I went home and drew out the stencils and everything of the logo, and got back there the next morning and lettered it right on the car right there at the show. It was pretty awesome.
Wow, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I've also done the same for John Force a couple of times. He's needed lettering done. One time in Seattle, the area where it said Jolly Rancher on the green and white Castrol car, that whole area chunked off. Literally, there was no paint there. And he says, "I just need the name on there." And I said, "Well," I says, "John," I said, "let's do this." I said, let's put the green background there in there too. So because it's going to be on TV. And he says, "Well, I don't know. You'll never match it." And so he said, "Well," he goes, "Okay, buddy, do what you got to do." And I said, "All right." So anyway, I went ahead and lettered the Jolly Rancher in there and painted in the background. And I remember Austin Quell walking by and rolling his eyes. Well, we went out and sat in the stands and watched the next round. And so he comes out there with where I patched it up, and you could not tell. And then on later that night, I was watching ESPN, and they panned that car right where I did that lettering, and you couldn't tell that it was done. So that was pretty awesome. And another time is lettering had blown off the windows, and so I put his name on there and his number 4 on both sides of the car. So that was pretty awesome as well.
Wow. Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah, I actually do. I do race car renderings and whatnot as well, and I've got 6 cars which I call my hit records, and what that means are they're cars they made diecasts of. So I've actually got diecast cars that I designed back when Racing Champions was really big. Did a couple of Rhonda Hartman cars. Did a Kristen Powell car. I did a car for Jerry Dencham, the red and white NEC car. Did a Scusa car. So, if I never do any more again, I'm glad that I got to do what I did. Also, there was a Jim Epler car as well.
Very cool, Rich. So now, Rich, when you're out on the track racing, do you have any pre-race rituals or superstitions?
Really, the only ritual I have, and I don't really would call it that. I normally like to pray with somebody from Racers for Christ, and that's pretty much the only thing we do. When we get the car up there, I also have a crew member named Russ Cassidy that it goes along with us all the time, and both Russ and Brent do a great job of keeping me calm and keeping me focused. And Brent's usually the one that wheels me right into the beams, and then he smacks the tire with his hand or with his fist, and that's always kind of cool too.
So what kind of preparation goes into getting this dragster ready for a weekend?
Well, hopefully everything is done, but sometimes nothing's done, and So you'll spend a few days before working on the car. I got a great guy named Dave Morris that does a lot of the prep on the car before we go to the races, and a lot of times he comes and bails me out when I'm behind. Of course, going to the bank and getting money, and buying a bunch of brake clean, and going to the store and buying a lot of drinks and food for the weekend, that kind of stuff. And then we just get on the road and head to wherever we're going to head. And going out on the road is what I love the most. I love going to our local track because we see a lot of friends there and whatnot. But what I really enjoy and I look forward to is leaving on Friday and going to Yakima or Spokane or even Billings, Montana, which is on the other side of the Continental Divide, and going to those tracks and getting set up. And I mean, I just love the whole thing. Driving down the tracks is just a portion of it. It's everything else too that makes it so great.
So would you consider Woodburn your favorite track?
It is my favorite track for a lot of reasons. It's a track that I broke both the 6-second and 200-mile-an-hour mark at. It's where our friends and family can come to and enjoy themselves. It's a great track. I mean, it's one of the best tracks on the West Coast. It's all concrete now. Joey Severance, the 4-time world champ, He runs that track, and he does a great job, and he's a wonderful person. So, I love that track, and I also love Medford. That's also one of my favorite tracks, and Yakima, Spokane. There's not a bad track. I mean, I love them all for different reasons.
Now, do you only do quarter-mile racing?
No, some of our races are quarter, and some are 8. We have on the Blown Alcohol Thunder circuit. We have 2 tracks that are 8th mile. One of those tracks is in Butte, Montana, and then the other one is Renegade Raceway, which is in Yakima, and that's actually a quarter-mile track. But when they bring Blown Alcohol Thunder to town, they run at 8th mile, and I never knew what the reason was, but I will say this, that I love 8th mile because it's a lot easier on parts than quarter-mile tracks are.
Yep. Now, what would you consider to be some of the milestones of your drag racing career?
Oh, my milestones probably is reaching that 6-second mark and reaching the 200-mile-an-hour mark. The 6-second mark is awesome, but there's something different about the 200. When you do 200, there's just something about it. And when I first started, and the reason I say the 6-second, 200-mile-an-hour marks are big to me personally is because when I first started racing, I was running an 8-second car, and at that time, I had no idea where my career was going to go. I didn't know if that was going to be it, or if I was going to go farther in it than I had. And the fact that I've gone 200 and 6 seconds, to me, that's big because there's a lot of bracket racers out there that never make that mark. And another one is one that is really awesome to me anyway, and that is the fact that we've kept our longtime sponsor Capital Auto Group almost to 20 years. So to me, it was 20 years this week that we signed them, and here it is, 20 years. I mean, to keep a sponsor 20 years is amazing, and so that to me is a big one. So we haven't had a lot of wins. We've had a few here and there, and we never really did well in the NHRA. But we did finish second in Blown Alcohol Thunder the first year. We won their inaugural race. That was pretty cool. The fact that we've been able to go out there and put the car in places that nobody has ever been before, such as like the Oregon State Fair and the air show and places like that. that's the kind of stuff that's big for me, because if we don't keep the sponsors happy, then we're not racing.
So what still keeps you passionate about drag racing after all these years of doing it?
Wow, I don't know. I couldn't imagine not doing it. Um, it's just what I love to do. Um, it's every year we're in a situation where we got to get our sponsors back on board and get the crew back on board, and get the car ready to roll, and so it's a year round deal for us. Basically when we're finished racing in September, we do car displays until the end of the year, and then I actually promote a big indoor car show called the Winter Rod Speed Show in January, and so we do that event. As soon as that event's over, we tear the car down and get it ready for the next year. And we've been very blessed to have a gentleman by the name of Keith McCurdy do all of our engine work and whatnot. And if it wasn't for Keith and Art Mendoza, who I mentioned earlier, and even Gary Eichman, who is a legend around here, I wouldn't be in business today, because we would just be stuck with problems that were beyond our pay grade.
All right, now I'm going to ask you a few fun questions here before we close out this interview. Ready?
Sure.
Now, outside of drag racing, do you have any other hobbies?
Not really. I used to love model building. I still do, but I don't have time for it, doing the real thing. So I would say model car building is one of them. I used to love HO railroads. Don't do that anymore. So pretty much right now, drag racing's it.
All right, now if you could do time traveling and go back in time, Rich, would you do anything differently with your drag racing career?
No, I don't. I mean, I think I would do. I wouldn't stop doing what I was doing. I would, if I could go back and in time and do it all over again, I would. There's probably things I would have done differently than I've done, but no, I think that I would keep doing what I'm doing.
All right, now as far as the sport of drag racing, do you have anything on a bucket list that you haven't done yet in drag racing that you would like to do someday?
Well, of course, it'd be fun to win a national event, but the car we have is not conducive to any NHRA classes except Top Dragster, and it would be cool to win a national event. That would be on my bucket list. But I think really my biggest bucket list item is to win the Blown Alcohol Thunder Championship. And we've come close a couple of times, but we just weren't able to get it done. And it's getting harder now because we got tougher guys in the class than we had when we started. So, but that would be one for sure. So
no nitro on your bucket list?
Well, I would love to do nitro. I think if I had my choice between Top Fuel or A Fuel, I'd be more interested in doing A Fuel, only because I could run the car at our local track, Woodburn. The problem now with Top Fuel is it's so expensive that I know guys that I've helped try to get into Top Fuel, doing work for them, doing renderings, proposals, and whatnot. And a lot of times they just can't make it happen because it costs so much money. I mean, I was just reading the other day where the guy that has Rust-Oleum Top Fuel Dragster, he says it costs him $100,000 a weekend to run that car. I mean, it's just not reality anymore. Now, had I been born a lot sooner and started doing this when I was back in the early 70s, then it's a possibility we could have raced Top Fuel for a short time, but nowadays it's just completely out of reach for almost everybody.
All right, most embarrassing moment on the track.
Well, there's been a few of those.
Well, what's the big one? Big one
uh,
that stands out?
well, I can't really think of any right at the moment, but there's been a lot of times where we've gone up to the to start the car and it wouldn't start, and then you'd have to push it back and be towed back in front of the fans on the Walk of Shame. So that kind of thing happens, and that's always embarrassing. But and it happens more than it should.
All right. What's your favorite food to eat?
Well, we love pizza.
What do you like on
Pizza,
your
pizza, pizza.
What do you like on your pizza?
Like sausage and olive. That's my favorite.
All right. Favorite beverage you drink?
You know, I like a lot of different beverages. I don't drink a lot of beer. Occasionally, I'll have a beer or something, but most of the time I'm drinking pop, and it's a bad habit. But it's just what I like to drink. I've recently started drinking these LaCroix sodas without any sweeteners in it, and I'm slowly getting used to that because I'm a diabetic.
Ah, okay. All right. So, what's your favorite music?
Well, I love rock and roll, and I've met several different rock bands over the years. In fact, we have a local band called Quarter Flash, and they've had 4 top 40 hits over the years. And one of them is called Hard My Heart. That went to number 3. Well, I became friends with the band, and they actually came out to one of our races at Woodburn, and I put the lead guitarist Marv Ross in the car, and we fired it up. And that was a great moment for me to have somebody like that who I used to go watch, at coliseums and stuff, and all of a sudden hear this guy in my pit. He's my buddy.
Wow.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. Yeah, I remember Quarter Flash, and I'm 51 years old, so yeah, I know all the 80s stuff. Oh.
Yep, you'd be right there, right? Yep.
Yep.
If you were that age, yep, you would know who they were.
Oh yeah. Now, you have a favorite movie of all time?
Oh, I love American Graffiti. I like to watch that every year. Here's one that is kind of seasonal. We always like to watch this movie called Ed Wood this time of year around Halloween, and that's just a really funny movie. If you haven't seen it yet, you got to.
Fondest memory of your drag racing career?
Well, one of them really happened. This is recently. We've been struggling quite a bit, and we went to Spokane, and we ended up winning the B final. And I remember the truck coming down with Brent and Russ in it, and Brent jumping out and hugging me like we just won Indy. It was pretty awesome. So I would say that was a really good moment for us. But there's been others as well. When we went 200, that was a big one. And we had a lot of people calling, congratulating us for that.
Awesome. Well, Rich, I want to thank you very much for taking time to interview. You got any final words?
Yeah, I just want to say that, we've got a great sport, and we just got to keep supporting our local tracks and doing everything we can to go out there and enjoy what we're doing and encourage our friends. And if you listen to this, you got a race car, take it out to these different events when you're not racing and get some exposure for yourself and your sponsors if you've got them, and if you don't, that's a good place to find a sponsor is a big event, and just take the cars out there and have a good time with it and share your sport with the general public.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Rich, for doing an interview.
Well, thank you, Dave. It was great.
And maybe we'll do another one next year and see how you're doing with the Dragster.
Absolutely. I'd love to do it anytime you want to have me on.
Awesome. Well, you have a great night, Rich.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.